Most statues that get put up are of people who are influential or famous, such as athletes, celebrities, and musicians. But I believe there should be a statue of my grandfather, George Tucker Stevens. For he made such a great impact on my life that I feel like everybody should know about it. He was such a hardworking man who cared for his family, and he had such a rough start to life that seeing him do the way he did in life really made me feel inspired. Some more information about my grandpa is he was born on September 27th of 1936 into a not so well family, and he had to work all his life. He never caught a break. He was in the military as a National Guard, and he lost his leg due to his bad smoking habits, something he always warned me about, and something he also always chatted me about. He spent a lot of time with me and cared deeply for me and the rest of my family. The old traditions he followed and old mannerisms ended up sticking with me. Since he means so much to me, I will spend these 8 to 9 minutes of this speech discussing his hard beginnings, the effort he put forth, the care he showed to me and my family, and the impact he left specifically on me. To start off with, the beginning of his life was no cakewalk by any means. He was born into a way below average family when it came to income, which painted a grim future for him, as according to ncbi.nlm.nah.gov, when children are born into poor families, it results in them having poor health and poorer quality of life when they are older. This really wasn't helped by the fact that he was born into the later stages of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. According to drought.unl.edu, 1 in 10 farmers had to change possession due to the drought, and nearly $1 billion in damage were caused by this. This all wasn't stacked on top of the fact that he had 5 other siblings. Can you imagine how much that had to stretch $1 or even less amount of money just to be able to feed him, his 5 siblings, his mom, and his dad, and if anybody else lived with him? Eventually, he ended up having to drop out of school, which really wasn't a good idea. This could have been detrimental to his future family due to the fact that, according to Civic Action Project, high school students who dropped out end up having problems with having children are usually stuck at lower wages. And after he dropped out, he ended up helping his dad at a store they owned. He had it rough in his early life, but the middle of his life really didn't make things seem any easier. My grandpa was a part of the National Guard, which is a branch of the U.S. military. They usually stay around and help in the States. The military is notoriously hard on their soldiers and rough on their mind. According to todaysmilitary.com, the National Guard basic training is the same training that the Army goes through. It's a 10-week long basic training camp that is meant to toughen them up both physically and mentally. While he was part of the National Guard, he worked a less demanding job inside a candy factory where he made and distributed candy. On the weekends, he worked for National Guard, and for the weekdays, he worked at the candy factory. The candy factory was actually called Ramsey Candy, and I have his jacket from when he worked there. Despite this candy job being a little bit less demanding, well, a lot less demanding actually, the work conditions really weren't so great back in the 60s. As I've studied in my history classes, the 60s had a lot less worker safety and restrictions as we do now. The wages may have been better, but it required a lot more work. The safety was just not accounted for back then, and people's lives were a lot more at stake. Eventually, he ended up having to lose his main source of income when he lost his leg due to the smoking habits he had warned me about when I was born. He lost his job at the candy factory, and he couldn't work as a National Guard anymore. But fortunately, he still received some veteran pay. But he never let any of these hardships ruin him or his life. He always loved his family. He would still pay attention to me and my sister. He would constantly joke about it to us, and he would try to play with us 24/7. He would often take us riding on his little wheelchair, or he would ride around the golf cart with us. Sometimes he would take us fishing, and the wheelchair he had was an electric wheelchair too. It was so funny. He'd take us up and down the hill, and on the golf cart he'd help us pick up pine cones. It was very funny. And you could tell that he still cared for us despite how much he missed his leg and how much it would affect him at such an old age. As according to the National Health Service, the loss of a limb greatly affects someone psychologically, as you have to mourn the loss of that limb and cope with the loss of sensation as well. But for him, it took a greater physical toll, as he just couldn't walk anymore. He would always either need a wheelchair or a walker, and the older he got, the more wheelchair bound he became. and he very quickly deteriorated. It was very sad to see, and it greatly affected him whenever he lost his leg. He turned bitter and sour as he lost his limb. He was still kind, but you could always tell just a little bit part of him that died when he lost his leg. My grandmother would end up having to take over for most things that he would do, such as driving. He also would have to attend physical therapy and would make sure to heal properly and could walk better. He would actually take me to those, and I would always get to help and learn the doctors' names. The doctors actually loved me there, and they would always talk to me. They'd even give me blueberries one time. It was a really sweet nurse who gave them to me. And it just kind of sparked my interest for the medical field. My grandfather actually used to make all the doctors laugh too. And it really shone through on his personality sometimes. He'd be having a bad day, and if he saw someone else having a bad day, he'd do anything he can to cheer him up. And I feel like that kind of shone through on me as well. I feel like I've picked that attitude up from him. And if me or my sister were having a bad day, he'd start telling us all the good things that we could think about and how we should always try to be happy even when we're sad. Because you cannot have the light without the darkness. And he always would give us a big old hug. He'd also give us a piece of candy too. And I feel like that's something I just really picked up from him. And finally, to describe the impact he left on me, I developed a lot of his mannerisms and personality. A lot of people say I talk just like him, that I have his same pronunciations, and I'm very proper with the way I talk. He had extremely kind manners towards people, and was always trying to crack jokes. I try to do the same when it comes to jokes, but I just don't have the humor like he did. He would always walk into a room, and he'd leave it laughing his butt off. Everybody in the room would be laughing. I don't know how he did it. I wish I could do it too. And as a side effect from working in the candy factory, he loved candy. He had a huge sweet tooth. I ended up developing a sweet tooth as well because he would always give me candy. But for something more physical that he left me his 1988 Chevy S10 Cherry Red. It was his personal truck, and I'm now the unofficial owner of it. It's still not in the best shape possible, and I wish I could fix it up sometime soon. But it's on my bucket list. Hopefully I'll be able to get to it, as that truck means more than me than just a vehicle. To me, it's a symbol of him living through me, because he would always tell me when he was younger that he would want me to take that truck for him one day and to drive him around in it, or for me to use it when I go to college. My grandpa is a good example of how your upbringing really doesn't define who you are, and it won't change your heart. You can be born into a family with nothing and still have a heart of gold. He worked hard for all the things he had in his life, and he worked hard to make sure his family had comfortable lives. He left such a huge impact on me. I can still see some of the things in him that I do. Thank you for listening to talk about my hero, my grandfather, George Tucker Stevens.